Hi everyone, I'm Anna Finch and welcome back to my channel Finch Press. So today's video is video 4 of the series, which is to do with writing and publishing a children's picture book. Again, this is what I'm going to talk about is my opinion, what I learned from it. It's based on my experience. What worked for me may not work for you. So let's get started. So one thing you need to do is create a budget and stick with it as best you can. Now, obviously, there's going to be things that pop up unexpectedly, fees that you have to pay, revisions you have to do. It's inevitable. So, obviously, you might end up. I would, when you create your budget, have a bit extra set aside. Say this is for like just in case. Like, for example, Ingram Spark, they charge a revision fee. So if you upload a copy of your book, you approve it, one of your beta readers or one of your ARC reviewers comes back and says, hey, I noticed all these errors on these pages, and you go and edit it, you've got to re-upload the new file. They're going to charge you $25 US for every file. $25 US is about $50 Australian, if not more. So it's quite a bit of money. So leave some leeway, but try and stick with the budget as best you can. Now, assuming you've gone onto Upwork or Fiverr on one of these platforms and you've had a look at some of the different illustrators, you need to find an illustrator that has a style that suits your age range, the category, and book type. If the age range is for 3 to 5 year olds, okay, bright, colourful, or whimsy styles, okay, cartoony, okay, very different style to if you're doing a comic book, okay, or if you're doing a visual novel. The styles are very different because the age range and needs are very different. So the illustrator you pick needs to suit the age range, category, and book style. Or if you can't notice that stuff in their portfolio, but you do like their style, ask for a sample page. See if they can do what you asked in the style that you want. Does it look good? Who knows? Maybe they can. Okay. Sample pages, I do suggest you get some. Basically, it's a try before you hire for the full book. You need to know they're capable of doing what you need them to in the style you need. On Fiverr, sample pages will cost money. Okay? Because there's no guarantee that they will be able to, that they're going to get the work for the full book. Upwork, it depends on the artist. Some will offer a free sample page. My illustrator did for Hide and Seek Alphabet. Before you get a sample page, though, ask if they can meet your deadline, especially if you've got a fairly short turnaround. Okay? And if they can meet and complete everything you need. So if you need them to do cover design, typesetting, formatting, at the very least for print, you need to make sure they can do it. If they can't, okay, if you need them to do cover design, typesetting, formatting, and say they meet the deadline, but they're like, I've never done formatting before, or I don't know how to do typesetting. Ask yourself if you can live with, if you like this, if you like their art and you really want their art, you can. It's your choice. Do you go with that art? It's your choice whether you go with that artist or you hire someone that can do all of the things you need. Like with my illustrator, they had never really done formatting, or at least some of the illustrators I contacted have never done formatting. So I decided what I could live without was, well, if they did the illustrations, If they could at least put the text, like if they could put the text in, they can do the cover and the illustrations, and they could put the text in, and if they sent me the individual files, I've got programs where I can format it myself for print. I could live without formatting. Typesetting, I was like, but I could live without the formatting for a print book or for an ebook, because I could do it myself, or I could hire someone else to do it for fairly not that much money. Decide what you can live without. If you really love their artwork and you really want to sample page because you really love their artwork and you think it'll work well for your book, but they can't do everything you need, what can you live without? And what are you okay with hiring someone else to do? So yeah, and beware, not every illustrator will be able to do all these things. Just because they can illustrate doesn't mean they can design a cover. Just because they can do cover design doesn't mean that they can do illustrations. Okay, they're different skill sets. Now, there's no point purchasing a sample page from someone who can't meet your deadline. Now, if you want to hire them anyway, and that's your choice, you'll either need to pay extra or change your deadline. You need to choose, can you be flexible with that deadline, yes or no? If the answer is no, you have to be that deadline, well, you better fork out the extra cash. Because if they're going to need to spend so much time focusing on your work only, okay, and to the point where they might have to say no to other jobs that will pay them a decent amount of money, you better be compensating them for it. With Upwork, so you're hiring an illustrator. When you're creating a job on Upwork, be detailed. Write down everything you need the person to be able to do. Spell it out clearly in black and white. Write out the formats they need to know how to create for. The DPI, the source files, the typesetting, etc., etc. Write down specifically what skills they need to have. You need to decide if you're going to pay per hour or by milestone. Now, initially, I put per hour when I created the job because I thought the currency that was showing on the screen was Australian dollars, because I put down my preferred currency was Australian dollars. It was US. Now, I did find my illustrator for it, and she's very lovely, and she asked me if I wanted to do hourly contract or if I wanted to do a milestone. So I had to change the contract to be a milestone one. If you pay per hour, they will create a log for like the day or the week, and they'll say how much time they spent on doing your job, and you pay them for that. Milestone is you say this is how much the total value of your work is worth, and you break it up into segments, and you pay once each stage of the project is completed. So say color studies, sketches, storyboards might be one milestone, or different milestones, and then you'll have the illustrations as another milestone, or formatting or typesetting as another milestone. So if you pay per milestone, it can work out cheaper than paying per hour. You just need to decide what works better. So this is what the job might look like on Upwork. So this is what I used for the alphabet book. As you can see, I was very detailed. Obviously, you may not be as detailed as that, but I prefer to put more detail in this so that the people who are applying or putting their name down for this job know what I need, and they know clearly in black and white what's expected, when's expected by. So I clearly write in the deadline. I also put what I can live without. So formatting illustrations, I put it in the asterisks, and I put at the bottom, if the illustrator has no experience formatting books, as long as they provide the PDF PST source files, it is possible for me to have it formatted by someone else, or for me to format it myself, because I've got the program on my work laptop. Yeah, be careful when you're selecting hourly or milestone. because you can't change it on the thing until you hire an illustrator and they agree to go into to do milestone if you put hourly, or to do hourly if you put milestone. They have to agree to change it. You need to put how long roughly the project will take, what level of skill you're looking at. I put entry because I needed the cheapest possible. I accidentally put ongoing when it was just a short-term fixed contract. You're also asked to select what you want the illustrator to answer when they're submitting a proposal. Their recent experience, and I put recent experience in any certifications. Now, certifications is not necessary. Just because someone is certified and has a qualification to do something doesn't mean they can. That they can do it to this in the style you need. So, but I put it there as like a just in case, like if they do have any qualifications, I want to know about it. Okay, because if they have got a specialization with something else, I may hire them for something else. Yeah. Okay. So your artists have applied. Now what? Review their portfolios. Look at the skills they've put in the proposal. They should have meet the requirements you put down initially. Narrow it down to a small group. So once you go through the artists, you look at the portfolios. If you like a particular artist, you can shortlist. So like you can select shortlist, and you go through. Once you've shortlisted them, okay, the ones you liked, go to the shortlist, look through their portfolios in much more detail. Look at the images they can do. Can they draw animals? Can they draw people? Do you need people in your picture book? Do you need dragons? Do you need underwater scenery? Whatever. Look at their portfolios very closely. Look at the styles they do the art in. Can they do what you need, and how much do they want for their work? From that shortlist, select 2 or 3, message them, confirm that they can meet your deadlines and do everything you need. Ask them about copyright, if they're willing to transfer it. If they are not, is that something you absolutely need? I personally would rather have copyright transferred to me. So if I want to edit the images later, I can. If I want to use them for a puzzle, I can. Or for any sort of merchandise, I can. But also, if I own the rights to the images, it means that they'll get the one payment and that's it. And they will not get any royalties. So I don't know how well my books are going to sell. No one knows how well their books are going to sell or not. So for me, transferring copyright is a safety net. I would rather have copyright transferred to me so that if I need to alter it for whatever reason, if I use it in advertising or whatever, I know I can, because a commercial use license may have some inbuilt limitations. But yeah, ask if they're willing to transfer it. Oops. Okay. They say, yep, I can do that. I can make your deadline. I can do the style. Okay. Ask for a sample page. Pick a scene in your book that is the most complex or contains both adult and child characters and animals with a background. Now, caveat. If your book has human characters, okay, this is if your book has human or semi-human characters, okay, then if there are both adults, children, and animals in your children's picture book, okay, mainly the Mermaid has those, okay, you need to make sure that they can draw all three. So pick a scene in your book which contains adults, children, animals, and a background. Okay, this is if your book contains human or human-like characters with adults and children. Okay, here's why. Just because someone can draw a child, okay, or illustrate a picture of a child fighting a dragon, doesn't mean they can draw an adult. Adults and children are very different. Okay, adults and teenagers are very different. Okay, so they need to be able to draw all the things you need. Now, with hide and seek alphabet, it was only animals. There were no human characters. But I need to know they can draw reptiles, birds, mammals, and things that live in the ocean or swim. Okay, so I needed to know that they could do all those things, these different types of animals. Something with fur, something with feathers, something with scales, and something underwater. So I had a look. I'm like, okay, this person can obviously draw birds. I know they, based on this other thing in the portfolio, I know they can draw this type of animal and this type of animal. So I picked one of the more complex animals. Okay. And one that I hadn't seen from the artist. That's with a book with all animals. But if you've got a book with human or human-like characters and animals and mythical creatures or whatever, pick for your sample page, pick the most complex page, which contains at least an adult, a child, an animal. So you know you can do all three. So for Melly the Mermaid, there are two adults, and there is a child, and there are sea life. Okay, I made sure when I asked for sample pages, I looked at the sample pages they gave me. Some of them, for a couple of them, the child looked like a teenager, but the child needed to look like about a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, but they looked like a teenager. So it's really important when you do those sample pages, you pick a more complex page, especially if you need child and adult. If the book's about animals, like mine, but you've got an adult animal and you've got a child animal, pick the more a scene with a complex background, plus with the adult and the child in the same scene, even if it's animals. See if they can draw it. Okay, because you need to know they can do what you need them to. Okay, so if you like the sample, sometimes you may not. There are some sample pages I got for Melly the Mermaid which I liked, but didn't wow me. And again, this is based on my experience. Ask them about their process. What will they send you while they're working on the job? Will they send you storyboards? Will they send you color studies? Will they send you font samples before creating the illustrations or putting the text in the illustrations? Okay. The artist I hired for Hide and Seek Alphabet, they sent me a full workflow document and said, okay, this is the calendar between now and the deadline. This is how much time I think I need for this stage, this stage, this stage, this stage. They broke it down into stages so I knew what to expect when. They said they were going to do storyboards, okay, sample storyboards for the entire book, which they did. Okay, with thumbnail samples with 3 different layouts. So I had different spreads, 3 different spreads for each animal in the storybook, or in the Hide and Seek Alphabet book. They did that for every single animal, every single page, or every single spread. And I could pick, I liked the right page from this one, the left page from this one. and I could pick the ones that I liked best. They sent color studies. These are the colors for these particular animals. I could pick which ones I think would work best. They sent font studies as well. They sent font samples. So I could pick which one I liked. She was amazing. But the process for the Melly the Mermaid illustrator, very different. The sample page, they sent a sample, fully illustrated, made a comment for fixing something. They fixed it. I got no sketches, no color studies, no storyboards. Okay? It's just how they worked. It depends on you, it depends on the project, if it's going to go over a long period of time, or if you just need it in like a set block. You might need to negotiate a workflow and a timeline for each milestone to be completed. If you are doing milestones, I think Fiverr has added the option for milestones now. When I did it, it wasn't an option. It was literally you pay one hit. This is the final due date. So find out the process, because it'll be very different. It will differ from illustrator to illustrator. Some illustrators will they'll ask for feedback constantly throughout the entire process to make sure you're happy with it. And some will literally not contact you until the illustrations are done with the writing for you to actually check it. So it depends. Ask their process. I didn't ask the process for the hide and seek alphabet book. She told me I'm going to create a workflow document. This is roughly how I expect the milestones to be broken up. Roughly how long it would take me for each step. I worked out the price for each milestone. But that was helpful. Whereas Fiverr, because it was all in one block payment, due in one certain time, yeah, very different. Now, when you're hiring an illustrator, before you even pay any sort of milestone, create a contract. Negotiate the price. The price needs to be fair for you and for the artist. Now, obviously, you are on a budget. Okay? Now, you should have made sure prior to even getting a sample page, working out, asking how much it would be, how much it would cost overall for a final completed project with all the things you need. So you should already have an idea. Okay, you can negotiate down. Okay, they may negotiate up. It depends. But if you know the person, if you know you cannot afford that particular artist. So one of the artists I looked at before hiring AP Gill, which is the one I hired for Hide and Seek Alphabet, I looked at the illustrations that they had in their portfolio, loved them, loved the style, but, and I'm not joking, the cost in Australian dollars was close to $4,000 for the fully illustrated book with everything I wanted. That is a month and a bit worth of pay. As soon as they said the price, I'm like, thank you for offering. I'll get back into contact you and let you know by a certain time in the week if I intend on going through with this. I tried to negotiate down. I'm like, I can't go above a certain amount. I was very clear on that. Found another illustrator. I gave a decent price. I went ahead with AP Gill. So the price has to be fair to you, but it also has to be fair to them, because they're doing a job. They're working a number of hours. Okay, they've got a life. They need to pay their bills. It needs to be fair. So sometimes You will want to save money as an artist, as an author, as a publisher, self-publisher. But you can still save money when hiring an artist, but you need to make sure it's fair. So someone who's got 15 years experience doing illustrations, working in the industry, obviously they're going to expect a higher fee, higher cost. They just are. They've got more experience. Whereas someone who's just started in the business, or started, maybe they've only done one job previously, or whatever's in their portfolio was stuff they did outside of a job. Obviously, because they're entry level, the price will be lower. So you can save that money that way and go with a new artist that has just started instead of a more experienced artist. But even then, you need to pay them properly. Pay them properly for the work. Hide and Seek Alphabet has 54 pages of illustrations. Of the 54, 52 are individual illustrations. One of them is a spread, which means it's an illustration that goes over 2 pages. Now, 54-page illustration. Okay, that's obviously going to cost a lot more than a 24-page non-spread illustration book. Okay, so I paid more for illustrations for Hide and Seek Alphabet than I did for Melly the Mermaid. That is simply due to the page count. Make sure all the detail, when it comes to pay, actually, before I go into the next bit, now, because I made the mistake of putting hourly instead of milestone, the person did say they're willing to work for a certain amount of price per hour. So what I did was I asked them how long it would take to do each illustration so I could work out a cost. So I asked them how much, I'm pretty sure I asked how long does it take you to do the illustrations, each particular thing. They said, about this much, and I used it to work out a price. And I worked it out in US, and I converted it to Australian dollars. And I said, this is the price I would like to pay you in Australian dollars, which was actually within the price range, depending on how fast she worked. It would have been more than the hourly wage, the hourly rate she put down, depending on how fast she worked. So it was in the fair range. I wanted to give a fair amount. I was willing to give for the other artist, the other illustrator that I was thinking about hiring, going up to a certain amount. At the very least, I could do the same for this one. Be fair with the price. They're doing a job. Make sure all the details you discuss, because you'll probably be messaging back and forth, make sure you're discussing it. I mean, with Upwork, you've got a bit more leeway with discussing price and stuff like that, and the contract itself. Make sure all the details you discuss are explicitly in a contract. There are templates you can get for a contract. If you're interested in one, I can send you a template that I did for my books. Obviously, removing key details about my books and stuff that you can use. Details you might put in your contract might include milestones, payment per milestone, the total milestone, like cost of the project with the milestones added, the currency you're paying in. Now, we negotiated the contract in Australian dollars. I didn't realise until she asked me to double check whether or not the money I put in for the contract, like on the website, whether or not it was in US or Australian dollars. Luckily, she pointed it out, because otherwise I would have been paying in the price we negotiated for Australian dollars in US, which is a lot more. So Yeah, whatever the currency is. So be clear. Is the money, is the total final cost, is it in US? Is it in Australian dollars? Is it in pounds? Whatever. So the currency you're paying in is important. Deadlines for each milestone or for the overall project. The number of revisions. Copyright transfer. Review and check-ins if they want it, etc. You need to make sure you give them the front and back matter, or tell them when you're going to send in the front and back matter. The story text is a must, so the manuscript itself. Reference images, if there is any. So if it's animals, and if you want the animals to look recognizable, you can send those in. Blurb. Okay, you may not have written the blurb yet, but you need to let them know when you'll send it in. Yeah. These are just some example terms I put in the contract that I discussed and negotiated with my illustrator. I wrote up the initial contract, asked them if there's anything they wanted me to add, or what they wanted me to change. So things like upon completion of the project. Now, this was actually the first time I used my law degree for something other than teaching. So one of the things I did was, I can't remember if I did employment or contract law, something along those lines. Pretty sure I did contracts at some point. So I structured it the same way a normal contract would be. I use basic English because the illustrator you hire, English may not be their first language. Okay, so you don't want it bogged down with too much legalese. It needs to be clear, get the point across. And legalese, so lots of technical legal terms in there, doesn't really matter. I mean, it needs to make sense for both parties. But you don't need to put a whole bunch of legalese or legal terms in there, because that might just confuse either of the parties, and it may change the meaning of the text. So be straightforward and clear. So something like, upon completion of the project, the illustrator will deliver the editable source files for the project in PDF, PSD, and InDesign to the client. So I specifically say these are the files that they need to send me. The source files include the ebook, hardcover, and paperback cover for the project. Source files for the illustrations and typesetting will be provided. Now, you need to know what font they used for the inside of the book. If they've got source files with the font in them, or a separate file for the font, you need that. The fully formatted file meeting the print requirements for Ingram Spark and KDP will be provided, including title page, front and back matter, and illustrations. Okay, fairly clear. Sets out exactly what they need to give. Timeline. The illustrator has provided an estimated timeline in the workflow document given to the client. Now, the hide and seek alphabet illustrator AP Gill did give me a workflow. The illustrator you hire may not. You may request one. The timeline may alter depending on revision and difficulties. Now, in the timeline section, you could put your deadline for files for each milestone. You definitely do need to put the term in there about the timeline, the deadline may alter depending on revision and difficulties, because things will happen in their life or in your life which will delay. You might get delayed. So putting that in there is important because it gives both parties some sort of leeway. Another term I put in there was transfer of copyright. Client owns the work product upon completion of the project, and payment has been made in full to the illustrator. Okay. For the terms of this contract, work product refers to the fully completed project that the illustrator has been hired for. So one thing you need to do when you're doing contracts is define any terms, because if you don't define them and there's a legal issue, the court's going to define them. Also, this is something I did for my illustrations. This is based on my process of my thing. And I use my knowledge of law. I am not a lawyer. Okay, these are just suggestions. Okay, if you are writing a contract, okay, you can use a template. You can go to a solicitor and pay them to create a contract for you, okay, for the other person to sign. Okay, ask advice from a legal professional about a contract. Okay, you need to make sure you know what you are doing, okay, and you know what you are writing down. All right. If you are interested in the template for this contract I use with my illustrator, you can contact me in the let me know in the comments, and I can message you directly, and send you a copy. Now, be aware. Again, I'll reiterate. I am not a lawyer. I may have studied law. I may teach legal studies. That does not make me a registered lawyer, solicitor, barrister, whatever you call them in your country or where you live. Okay? I am not a registered lawyer. This is just suggestions or things I did when creating my picture book. I highly suggest, if you intend to create a contract for your book, for illustrations, okay, that you go to a solicitor or a lawyer yourself and pay them to make it, or get them to give you advice as to what is allowed and what's not allowed in a contract. Okay? Do not take this as legal advice. This is just a suggestion or something I've done based on my experience. If you are intending to create a contract between yourself and an illustrator, go to an actual legal professional and get it written by them. Okay? You take it then, you get it signed by the other party, they make suggestions or they make suggestions for alterations, you go back to your solicitor, you make changes. Okay? Unless you are even if you're using a template, take it to a legal professional and say, hey, is there anything in this that shouldn't be in here for this type of contract? Get professional legal advice before you're doing this. Okay? Now, with my one, I define the legal term or a term in that particular section. Okay? This means this. So that first one I put, 8.1, basically means me, the client, I only own the illustrations once I have paid the illustrator in full. Okay? This means that the illustrators agreed to transfer the copyright to the client upon full payment. It's just expanding on the previous one. The client can use the work product as they see fit. Okay, me, I can use it however I want. This includes modifying it and using it to create marketing materials for the project. I clarified this is what I need to be able to do with it. In return, the illustrator will be credited as the illustrator on the cover of the book and acknowledged as the cover designer in the acknowledgement section of the project. I've said, this is what I need, but this is what I'm giving in exchange. Okay? It is their work. Whether they own the copyright still or not, they created it, they're going to be credited for it. The client gives permission for the designer to use the product as part of portfolios and websites, in galleries and other media, so long it is to showcase the work and not for any other purpose. The client does not give permission to sell or otherwise use the work product to make money or for any other commercial use. This is to do with what the artist does with the work once I've been delivered the source files. Okay. I negotiated with them. I negotiated the terms with my artist, my illustrator. You do need to negotiate terms with your illustrator, but it might be helpful if you go to a solicitor and get a template, get a standard contract designed from them that you can alter for any other book. Now, working with an illustrator, give feedback on their work. If they're sending you a sample image, if they're sending you a sketch, give feedback. If you don't like something, tell them. Make editing requests. Okay, if you don't like something, tell them. You're paying them to create a piece of work that you will like and that you're going to sell. If you think it's not great, you need to tell them. Print a proof copy before finalizing the job. Make sure it prints out correctly. I didn't do that with hide and seek, but it was a fairly open contract, so the revisions still are there. But I finalized the payment upon source file. If you same with Melly the Mermaid. I printed a proof copy, but I closed the project before I got the proof copy. As a suggestion, probably put it in there to make sure it fits. Most illustrators will allow you to fix something if it's like an error in the formatting that they created that it caused the problem with the actual design itself. They may fix it. Also, you need to be aware of is that if you intend on entering book awards for a children's picture book, be aware that some book awards will require both the illustrator and author either live or be from a specific area. There are like 4 or 5 book awards here in Australia which I can enter a children's book into, but the illustrator has to be Australian or live in Australia within for 2 years. The art and the author has to live in Australia, be an Australian citizen, or live within. Yeah. So I can't enter my children's picture book into those awards, and they're the big awards in Australia that are very recognisable, which not the best. Not the best thing. So you need to be aware of that. Right, that was it for this video. My new release came out on the 21st of October. It's currently available from $3.99. That the price is in ebook in US dollars. It's also available in paperback and hardcover everywhere books are sold. All right, that's it. All right. Hey.